Hey guys, it's Imani. What's up? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing a books I've read in 2020 so far. Now, admittedly, I've fallen off so badly when it comes to reading books this year. I feel like at the top of the year, I was working full-time while being in school part-time, so I just didn't have that much time. But I feel like I was doing decently then. Like, I read a good amount of books, kind of. And then the pandemic hit in March, and I feel like I was doing good then, but then also fell off. I feel like I hit a book slump. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with GoodReads, I'm sure you are, but I did the book reading challenge this year, and I only set a goal for 24 books, which is really small because I feel like normally I can get through books pretty quickly because I love to read, but this year I just haven't really been into it. I'm not sure why. So I feel like by doing this video, it'll actually hold me accountable a little bit. And I think it's also really fun to see what books people have read this year, you know, get some ideas of books that you might like. Yeah, and I feel like it'll be a really fun video. And let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, or if based off any of the books I mentioned, if you think there's books I might like, please tell me. But yeah, so we're gonna hop right into the video, and we're gonna start off with the first book I read. If you see me looking down, it's because I have my laptop with my GoodReads list pulled up. So yeah, so the first book I read this year was Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. Now, I'm sure everybody knows that this is the insanely follow-up to The Children of Blood and Bone that she published maybe about 2 years ago, and I'm obsessed with that book. I know when it came out, they were hailing it as like the Black Harry Potter, and I guess in a way it sort of kind of is, without the school, I guess. So this book was actually really, really good. I thought it was a pretty decent follow-up to the first book. I feel like I had very high expectations for this book, and I feel like it met them. I'm super excited for the third book. I'm not sure when it's going to come out. Hopefully it's soon. But what I will say is that Tomi Adeyemi's world building is out of this world. Like, I feel like it's probably in one of my like top 5 books of world building. Like, it's amazing in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, because I feel like it has a crazy amount of reviews on GoodReads too. Yeah, it has 4,800 reviews and 28,000 ratings, so it's a good book. So moving on to the next book, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Okay, so I was late to the Leigh Bardugo train. I don't know where I was. I think I was living under a rock. And I work with books too, and I just had never heard of this book. So I feel like I had just gotten off of my Throne of Glass, a series by Sarah J. Maas binge. The last book came out in December. Read it, I was devastated and just wanted to like itch that itch again. And I was actually talking to a coworker, and she recommended this book, and she was like, you know, I think you'd really like this. It's like sci-fi fantasy. Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure what the difference. Well, okay, I struggle between the difference between sci-fi and fantasy. So I feel like if you hear me use the words interchangeably, please don't judge me too harshly. And if you want to educate your girl in the comments, let me know. But yeah, so Ninth House deals with like witchcraft. It's a secret society situation. So it does have sort of those high like fantasy and science fiction-y type of vibes that I'm into. And yeah, I actually have read other books by Leigh Bardugo. I read Six of Crows, because I mean, who hasn't read that book? And things like that, and I just didn't know how I missed this one. So what I will say, this book is unlike any other that I've ever read. I've never really dealt with books that deal with secret societies per se, and this one is even more awesome in my personal opinion because it takes place on a college campus, so you get like kind of the best of both worlds. The book is just very detailed, and what I will say is I remember it being a little bit slow paced. Like, I was enjoying it, but at the center of the book there's a bit of a mystery, I guess you would say. Like, there's something you're introduced to at the beginning of the book that you spend the entirety of the book trying to figure out, and there also winds up being a parallel storyline that intertwines with that as well. So yeah, so I remember liking it but thinking it was a little bit slow. But yeah, so that's Ninth House. So definitely shout out to my coworker for recommending it to me, because I did enjoy it, and like I said, it is truly unique to anything that I've read before in my opinion, and your girl has read quite a bit of books in her life. Ooh, okay, so the third books I read, so I'm just gonna do the third, fourth, and fifth book that I read this year. And so like the main bulk of the books I read this year belong to a series called The Demigods of San Francisco by K.F. Breene. I love the series. It's an indie series. It's not published by a major house, but these books are insanely popular on GoodReads and also on Amazon, and I see why. Just for example, the first book has 13,000 ratings. That's a lot of freaking ratings, my word. And 900 reviews. Yes, I remember reading the synopsis and I was like, I'm reading this book immediately. So good. So yeah, so this basically is a paranormal romance story. It's a total of 7 books, and it deals with a main character who is Alexis Price, and she has supernatural abilities. I won't tell you what they are because that is a bit of a spoiler. One of the many facets of her power is that she can see dead spirits, and she can help them transition over into the afterlife. And she encounters the demigod of San Francisco, whose name is Kieran, and he's trying to find his mom's dead body to help her transition over into the spirit world, because she's basically being held in purgatory by his psycho father. So the story revolves around Alexis and her 2 wards, one who's magical and one who's non-magical, trying to help Kieran and his band of merry men, as I'm going to call them, and assisting his mom and taking down his dad. So there's no spoilers in that. You'll find that out pretty quickly in the book. So there's actually 6 books in the series. There's Sin and Chocolate, there is Sin and Magic, there is Sin and Salvation, Sin and Spirit, Sin and Lightning, and Sin and Surrender. But yes, this is my favorite read of the year so far. Super quick and easy reads. I've definitely read, I think I did them like 3 back to back, read 2 other books and then read the other 3 back to back. I loved it. I was really sad when the series ended. It has a hefty dose of romance, and some of the stakes in the book are high stakes, so I feel like you do have that urgency, but the characters are just so amazing, and it was just a really great read, and one I would highly recommend to anybody who's into paranormal romance books. I can't say enough good things about it. K.F. Breene is amazing, and her character development is stellar, so I would highly recommend this series. You can't go wrong. Please do yourself and me a tiny favor and read them. You won't regret it. So we're gonna move on to the next book I read in 2020. Okay, and then the next book, and I think this is going to be my favorite book for the year so far, is going to be House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, which is the first book in her Crescent City series. You guys, I think I mentioned earlier that I was on a Sarah J. Maas binge last year. I had rediscovered the Throne of Glass series. I think I had read the first book maybe like a couple of years ago and didn't like it that much. But for some reason I was like, let me just go ahead and read the second book. Instantly hooked. That was it. I literally binged all of those books last year in anticipation of the last book. I think it's like Kingdom of Ash. That was the last book, and that came out in December. I had it pre-ordered. I read that book so quick. I was so pressed, and it was amazing. It was everything I wanted it to be. So since that series was so good, I was definitely pumped for her new book that was set to come out, and it is her first adult book series, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be good. I was curious to see what the difference an adult series would yield, and it did not disappoint. So technically this is the 6th book that I read this year. It was super amazing. But just to give a little bit of insight, this book has 12,000 reviews on GoodReads with 67,000 ratings. Like, that's a lot of stuff. And the average rating is 4.45 stars, which is also impressive. I rated it a 5-star because, again, I thought it was out of this world amazing. And she has a hefty 816 pages, and I feel like every single page was needed. I didn't think it was drawn out. I thought it was awesome. I loved every minute of it. This book was amazing, heart-wrenching, just the world building was phenomenal. I mean, I didn't expect anything less because, in my opinion, the Throne of Glass series is immaculate. Chef's kiss. I know people can be overly critical of authors, but honestly, they're just people. Nothing is going to be completely flawless, but her books are pretty damn close. So yeah, this book did take me quite a bit to read because, again, I was working full-time and in school part-time, so it was a bit of a struggle, and it's over 800 pages, and yeah, but the book was amazing. I sobbed in this book, like sobbed multiple times throughout the story, because the murder that takes place in the book is like heart-wrenching. And so basically what happens in the book is there's a murder that happens, and it's like really tragic, and it's unsolved, and it's a very grisly murder. They pinned somebody on the murder, but you know, like from the jump, that's not who actually did it. So then as a result of that, the murder is then reopened, and so our main star, Bryce Quinlan, closely associated to the people who were murdered, and she's basically brought back in to retrace footsteps and try to figure out who the real killer might be. And then she's teamed up with this fallen angel, Hunt Athalar, who is trying to redeem himself to, I guess, essentially gain his freedom. And so, of course, as you know, there's like a budding romance and yada yada yada. But I will say the formula in which he did this book was not generic at all. Like, not to say that this story isn't one that I've seen at its very core, but the way it was developed throughout the book and just like the intricacies of all the other characters, I believed it was really well done. And I mean, any book that's going to get you to feel emotions, like when I tell you ugly cry sobbing, that was me several times. butterflies in the book several times. That was also me. So although it does have some heart-wrenching parts that can be a little bit challenging to read if you're a sensitive sap like myself, but I feel like it's definitely balanced out with feel-good moments and character development and adventure. And I feel like throughout the book, like, I didn't know how it was going to play out. Like, honestly, I love trying to guess plot points, but I would think I had one facet figured out, and then something else would happen that would negate my theory, and it really kept you on your toes. And I would definitely applaud Sarah J. Maas for not making the book predictable, because it wasn't. And I was honestly shocked at the ending, and like in the best way. And also the way the book ends to set up for the second book, I was like, no, in a good way though, because the second book isn't due to come out until, I think it is November 2021, which isn't that far away, honestly, so let me not complain. Let me just double check I have the right date. Yeah, November 2nd, 2021, so that's actually pretty soon. Sooner than I thought we'd be getting the second book, so let me hush up and be grateful. But yeah, so that's Crescent City, my favorite book of the year so far. Please go read it, please go read it, please go read it. You won't regret it. And if you don't want to dive into that book, definitely check out her Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, because that series is like 8, 9 books. I don't know off the top of my head, but those were also amazing. The 7th book I read this year was called Crave by Tracy Wolff. And really not too much to say about this book. I did enjoy, but it's definitely a Twilight ripoff, which I didn't realize until I was reading people's reviews, which I thought was hilarious because I did enjoy the book. So this book has 1,200 reviews on GoodReads and 5,700 ratings, and it has an average star rating of about 3.81, which is pretty solid. And I enjoyed this book. So it's basically about our main character. His name is Grace, and basically her parents die, so she has to go and live with her uncle in the remote part of Alaska because he's a dean of a prep school. So she gets to this prep school, and basically the folks there ain't normal, and they're like all different types of supernatural creatures, like vampires, werewolves, things like that. But for some reason, like, nobody likes her. And then of course she falls in love with, well, I won't say, well, love, whatever. I will say love. So she falls in love with Jackson Vega, who is like the school's most notorious kid, who was like known for being cruel and wicked, and nobody like messes with him because he's like low-key evil. So it's like sort of a cliche story that you've heard before, but I really enjoyed the book. It's slated to be a trilogy, so I'm definitely going to read the second one. And the second book is actually due to come out September 29th, so that's next month, so I'll definitely read it. So I'd say if you're looking for a lighthearted read that's not too crazy, definitely check this book out. I enjoyed it. I'm not mad that it's kind of like Twilight. That's fine in my opinion. Because again, that story isn't something that like Stephanie Meyer created. I mean, there's always been variations of vampire falling in love with a human storyline. But I will say that the main character, it's like, is she human? Is she not human? I won't spoil it for you, but there's enough twists in it that it kept my interest. And it's quite the hefty book. It's 592 pages, so it will keep you occupied. And I feel like it was an easy read. I didn't feel like it was a fat tome that I had to get through. So yeah, so that's Crave by Tracy Wolff. And it's also funny because the cover looks just like the Twilight cover, kind of like it's like an iteration of that. So I mean it's hilarious, but I mean, I'm not mad at it, if that makes sense. Yeah, so we're gonna move right along to the next book. So this book is gonna be another paranormal romance for you, and obviously I feel like you guys are noticing a little bit of a trend here, but hey, what can I say? And this book was actually it was pretty solid. I gave it a 4-star rating on GoodReads. It has 32,000 ratings and 3,200 reviews, so again, that's pretty great. So yeah, so after I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, and it was interesting. It's a fairly short book. It's about 300 pages, so I feel like it's definitely a quick read, but I feel like the story was really well paced, and there's not a lot of filler in the book, which is great. Something to point out though, this is a book that I would say is like 40% in the past via flashbacks, and then the other 60% is in the present. So if you're someone who doesn't like the past present jump, you're not gonna like this book. And it's also something that annoyed me a little bit because like sometimes I felt like the past scenes weren't necessary per se. And also the books are a bit short for me. I like to read books that are over 400 pages, like over 400, 500 pages, just because I like having more time with the characters. I feel like it's better to fully develop characters and fully flesh out a story without it being rushed. And also, for being honest, I just feel like I read a 326-page book in like a day, so it makes it not as fun when I'm reading it like that, because I don't like to drag on my reading a lot, but I don't want to finish a book in a day. But yeah, so I'd say check it out. Not a book I'm going to highly recommend, but I feel like it did its job and I wasn't mad at it. So we're going to go to the next book. Oh, this is the last book actually. So like I mentioned earlier, for the Demigods of San Francisco series, I did read them in 3 chunk blocks. So after the Rhapsodic book, I read the last 3 books in the series. So yeah, so that brings us up to the last book technically, and it is Born in Fire by K.F. Breene. So again, K.F. Breene is the author of the Demigods of San Francisco book, so I wanted more of her writing, so I went into another of her really popular series, which is the Fire and Ice trilogy. So this book series is actually pretty popular also. It has a bit of a cult following. So I see it has 19,000 ratings and 1,200 reviews with an average star rating of 4.13. So K.F. Breene is a pretty popular author because she has many series. So our main character in this book, her name is Reagan, and she is a supernatural creature because that's just the nature of this world. Basically spend the duration of the book trying to figure out what her power is. And what I will say about this book is, although there's a romance element, that's not the driving force of the book. Like, I feel like the romance is like sprinkled in throughout, and it's like very strange because I feel like I expected it to be more fully fleshed out after reading the first book, but apparently that's something that builds over the course of the trilogy, which is fine. But I feel like it just left me wanting a bit more because I'm used to all the books I read having a romance element. So basically this book has to deal with mages who are abusing their power and causing a disturbance, and they're like killing vampires, I believe. And basically our main character has to work with a very old elder vampire to try to help him solve what it is. So basically her power that you find out throughout the book is tailored to this. Like, she's very, well, I can't say what it is because I don't want to spoil it, but so the book is equal parts trying to just figure out what her power is, and also equal parts a mystery trying to solve why these mages are killing vampires, how are they so OP or overpowered, and with a dash of romance in it. This book definitely took me quite a bit to get there. I'm not even gonna lie, like I just wasn't feeling that clicking with the book, and I feel like maybe I had too high of expectations because I expected it to be just like the Demigods of San Francisco series, which isn't fair. But yeah, so I would kind of recommend it because I feel like it probably will get better with the rest of the trilogy. But again, it's one of those books where I'm not super pressed to go ahead and jump into the trilogy with 2 feet in. Maybe I'll revisit it, maybe I won't, I'm not sure. I mean, again, I do love K.F. Breene, so I feel like I want to give it another crack. Not a try because I didn't dislike the book, but just wasn't that strong in my opinion. But yeah, so that is going to wrap up all the books that I've read so far this year. That brings our total to 12. I'm totally slacking. My goal is 24, but I do want to go ahead and mention the book that I'm reading right now, which I'm loving. It's so good. It's From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I love her. I've read so many of her books throughout the years, and she never lets down. So when I saw she was coming out with a new book, I was like, oh girl, say less. So I ordered it, and I'm so excited. I feel like I'm about 50% done, and it's so good. I'm not going to read the synopsis for you because it's long, but I will go ahead and put every book that I've mentioned in the down bar. So if you want to pop over to Amazon or GoodReads and read the synopsis for yourself, feel free. But I will say I'm loving the book. I can't wait to see how it ends, and I know the second book is due to come out September 1st, so I need to finish it up quickly so I can go ahead and jump into the new book. But ooh, it's so good because it's this type of book is right up my alley. This is the type of book that I love, tried and true. You can never go wrong with this type of formula when you have fantasy element coupled with romance and then some type of war within the kingdom. Like, it also kind of gives me Throne of Glass vibes a little bit, so I feel like it's a different twist on the story that I loved, and I'm very excited, and I feel like it's going really good so far. So yeah, excited about that. But yes, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed coming along on my little book reading journey so far for 2012. 2020, my gosh. Whew. But yes, I'm excited to read some more books this year and try to hit my goal of 24 books and hopefully do a bit more than that because it's totally doable. But yeah, let me know what you guys have been reading this year, what you've been liking, what you haven't been liking. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.